At independence in 1960, Nigeria already had autonomous regions that were generating their own resources: the Western region, the Northern region, and the Eastern region. These regions are ethnic nationalities developed at their own style, pace, and availability of resources. And then, since the first military incursion in Nigeria's politics, what has become the fate of the subnational units that were products of that military incursion? Some ethnic nationalities in Nigeria have been making a case for a constitution that reflects the equality of all stakeholders in the Nigerian project. Is a constitutional reconstruction of Nigeria possible? And who will champion this cause of making Nigeria a truly federal entity? This is the Eastern Eye. I am Alex Obodo. Welcome to the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that x-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. The quest for true federalism is usually tied to issues of self-determination and the question of people's constitution. But what happens when some ethnic nationalities are held down against their will by a constitution that they have no hand in crafting? Joining me tonight on the Eastern Eye is Tony Nnadi, a legal practitioner, Secretary General of Lower Niger Congress, LNC, and co-convener of NINAS, Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination. He graciously joins me tonight from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Tony Nnadi, for joining me tonight on the Eastern Eye.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so...
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I guess that the first question will be, because people usually hear this talk about self-determination. And why is it important for maybe people like the Igbo nation? People talk about self-determination. Why is it important?
Self-determination is simply what it says. The right to decide how you live in your space. And in the case of Nigeria, and particularly the Eastern Nigeria as we know it, it is the question of how, in what formation do you want to operate? Do you want to operate as single entity, or you want to cooperate with your neighbors in the contiguous zone? And it's just a matter of the degree to which you control your environment, your life, your affairs, your everything around you. And so when it comes to constitutional arrangements, it is your sovereignty that dictates that you can be by yourself in your space. And if you wish to be in union with anybody, that sovereignty gives you the exclusive right to determine who you federate with, and what degree of autonomy you will have in that space. That's simply what it means.
Okay, so...
self-determination was the reason the Biafra, the Eastern Nigeria of 1967 had to go to war, because their sovereignty was hijacked, and they were supposed to now kneel down and obey. And so that's how it became war. We have not come out of that war to this day, because those who confiscated our sovereignty are still holding it, getting to us, killing us, holding on to our assets, economic assets, and all the right to work those assets.
Okay, I mean, it's a good thing we've set that aside. And for a lot of people watching this program, they always hear federation and confederation. For a lot of people in Nigeria, they've been hearing the word federation. But sometimes people also throw up the word confederation. And you know, that when the war was on, or shortly before the war started, I guess, in between, you had what they call the Aburi Accord. So talk to us about what the difference between federation and confederation is about.
Yes, federation and confederation different degrees of autonomy. They are the same except for the degree of autonomy each of them offers. A federation, if we were to put it in terms of percentage, you could say that a federation is a situation where you control no less than 60% of your affairs. What does that mean? Like in Nigeria of today, where there are 68 items on the exclusive list, where your electricity is waiting for somebody in Abuja to get it, your security is in the hands of somebody who does not wish you well. Your infrastructure, roads, railways, ports, even things like election, all those things are today in the unitary constitution of Nigeria bunched into the exclusive list that is in the hands of the federal government to do. But in a federation, it's not supposed to be so. A federation is where you are in control of those things that directly affect your daily living. You could then have some cooperation with others in that federation. A confederation offers a higher degree of autonomy, like we have Germany, France, Portugal, Spain doing their European Union today. They are in control of no less than 80% of all of what they do. The only thing they do in common is probably common currency, common telecommunication arrangements and such things. But every other thing, their electricity, their security, their elections, and all the other things are with them. So federation is a federation is a union of constitutions, a union of sovereignties. A confederation is also a union of constitutions, a union of sovereignty. The only thing is that in federation you have less autonomy than you have in a confederation. There's more autonomy in a confederation.
All right. So let's get into another leg of this. Let's go back to the issue of
yes.
At the time that the Biafra struggle started, was the Biafra Republic seeking self-determination? Yes. And again, how did the agreement for the ethnic nations of Biafra Republic come about?
Yes, they were simply seeking self-determination because the Nigerian Federation that was agreed in 1959 at Lancaster House had been toppled, and the carcass, was hijacked by, an invading force, the Caliphate, aided by some local collaborators, the Southwest, renegade elements from the Yoruba flag and the coastal areas of the East joined them in that alliance of 1967 against the Eastern region. And it came to where the lives, people were being killed. Eastern region, the government and people of the Eastern region had to consult to decide whether to remain and get killed or to fight to be free of that invasion, that occupation force that was coming against them, because a genocide had been launched against them. And that consultation was thorough. Ojukwu, as the governor, military governor of the East, had gone around to meet with the leaders of thought, and eventually they converged in what they call the consultative assembly, Eastern Nigeria Consultative Assembly. They considered all the options, and they realized that they agreed that it was time to draw a line so that the killings will not be brought into the Eastern region, because Easterners were being killed all across the north and part of the Western Nigeria. So it was an agreement amongst the constituent components of Eastern region of the time. The Igbo, the Ogoni, the Anang, the Efik, the Ijo, and it was actually an Ijo man called Opigo, Frank Opigo, that proposed the adoption of that name, of course, having consulted with his own the leaders of thought in their own part, because the something that was going to become a war. They wanted the world. They wanted to have a sense of belonging in the matter. That water that goes from Port Harcourt to Bonny and beyond, in the older maps, is called the Bight of Biafra. And so they wanted the world, Eastern region, wanted the world to know the part of the world where this mayhem was going on. And that was how they adopted the name Biafra for the, the republic they were going to declare of Eastern region of the time. The rest is, as they say, history. They tried for 3 years, and they are aided by Britain and East allies from all over the place, beat them down, and that's what we have. We are still in that union against our will. Nobody has asked us whether we are happy come to that union to this moment.
So, indeed, you've made the point that there was some kind of agreement within the space called the Eastern Nigeria at that time. So, let's move things along.
Complete. It wasn't a casual agreement. Complete agreement. Complete agreement. They traveled round. In fact, Ojukwu as governor, because he was the last quartermaster general of Nigerian army, he knew the equipment of war that Nigeria had. Ojukwu actually offered the riverine territory, the ones who are deep into water, away from where Enugu could effectively protect them without a navy.
Okay.
They were told, they were asked to accept being cut out from Eastern region so that they are not exposed to the Navy of Nigeria. They rejected it. They said when the killings began in July of 1966, that they were killed equally. They were killed everywhere along with the Igbo. And therefore, if it has become war, if it will become a fight, that they are going to stand where everybody else stands, where the Igbo stand in that affair. The same thing with the Anang and Efi. Philip Effiong was Anang. And so it was a very complete consultation. Anybody who tells you anything else is making it up. The records are there.
Okay. All right, perfect. So why is it that today Igbo nation and other indigenous ethnic nations or nationalities don't have self-determination?
They lost their self-determination based from that war. And the sequence was that the constitutions that brought us together as a federation in 1959, that's the Independence Constitution of 1960, because it was agreed in Lancaster House. It was discussed for 10 years and concluded in Lancaster House in 1959. It was three federating regions: the Eastern region, the Northern region, and the Western region of the time. By 1963, the Western region was split in two, and there was the Midwestern region that joined. So it then became a federation of 4 federating units and the federal government, which was the product of those 4 regions. They mandated a union office. The government of the federation, that's the federal government, is the union office set up by those 4 regions. And each of them had their constitutions. Apart from the federal constitution, they distilled and donated all the power it will have. And so it was the military incursion of 1966 that toppled those 5 constitutions. And from that point, particularly from the May 27th of 1967, when Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon announced the fact of the 4 regions into 12 states. Progressively from that point, a unitary constitutional arrangement, that is one constitution for this whole territory, got imposed. By the time the war ended, they carried it forward. By 1979, they codified it into what became the constitution. By then, they are split into, from 12 states, we went to 19 states, to 24, to 30, and 36 that we have now. They even brought local governments that they created, indiscriminately, 704 in all, to put into the constitution. So all the autonomy, all the self-determination that came with the arrangement had at the beginning had been washed away completely. And so the federal government that is supposed to be a union office became the owner of our sovereignty. And this constitution you see here is the mechanism by which they are holding on to it to this day. They did forward in 1999, what they did in 1979, with no reference to the owners of the sovereignty, including the Igbo.
All right. So how can we continue on this journey to self-determination? What has been done so far? Because at the end of the day, if the constitution you just showed is not written by all those that are making up the federation, as it were, so how do you then get to the point where everyone determines what happens to him and his space?
Yes, that's precisely the undertaking of NINAS. That's precisely the undertaking of NINAS. Right from the point in 1999 when this constitution was imposed, the same conveners and the arrowheads of NADECO went on to call a meeting of the peoples of Nigeria. That's the owners of the sovereignties that are conscripted into the Nigerian Union, so that we can, amongst ourselves, work out what will be the constitution by which we return to the democracy that has been suspended for a long time.
Yes.
And it was
Mr. Nadi, if you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Just pardon me. You will get into that thought,
I can hear you.
But we need to take a quick break. We will take a quick break. When we'll come back, you'll tell me.
Right.
You make that point in full, so I don't interrupt you when you are already in top gear. We'll take a break here on the Eastern Eye. When we come back, I think Tony Nadi, all the way from Lagos, telling us about what to do to sort out self-determination. And again, whose constitution is this? The constitution that we currently have. Join us after the break. Welcome back to the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV. We are reaching you live from Enugu, Southeast Nigeria, with me, Alex Obodo, and I still have graciously joining us from Lagos, Tony Nadi. So we're talking about the issue of self-determination and what has been done so far. Are the ethnic nationalities coming together to have a discussion about this? What's going on?
Yes, there's a discussion that even the global community is fully aware of, the government of Nigeria fully aware of, because we consulted right from that 1999 that this constitution was imposed by General Solomon Parker and his confederates. We decided that first we tried to get the government of Obasanjo to organize what will become the meeting of the people that will become constitution. I'm sure you heard about the campaign for sovereign conference and all of that. When after 5 years, the government refused, in about 2004, by then the consultations had come to the point where we now said to the government that the sovereignty belongs to the peoples of Nigeria exclusively, and even by the admission of their constitution as section 14 2A, section 14 subsection 2A, and I'm going to quote it. It says, sovereignty belongs to the peoples of Nigeria, from whom government through this constitution derives all its powers and authority. End of quote. Now that tells you that sovereignty belongs to the Igbo, to the Ijaw, to the Yoruba, to the Anang, to the Efik, to the Chief, to the Birom. It is only on account of that sovereignty that they're able to make out a union agreement that is then called constitution, that will set in place what will become the boundaries, the government, the powers of the three arms, the relationship with the federating unit and the citizen. It is the exclusive preserve of the constituent component, the sovereign peoples of Nigeria, to make the constitution, the union agreement. And so when Obasanjo's government, refused to listen to that, we had consulted, and we then called a meeting of the owner to say, our quarrel is not with the government at all. That the owners of Nigeria, who are suffering from the unitary arrangements that have been imposed by the military, are the ones who have to decide. And that was what became PRONACO. I'm sure many of the listeners today will remember that there was a sovereign conference of the peoples of Nigeria called PRONACO, Pro-National Conference Organizations, convened in 2005, 2006. We had 464 ethnic delegations that start for 2 years, sitting in Lagos at plenary, sitting in Port Harcourt, sitting in Enugu at plenary, sitting in Jos, sitting in Kano, and coming back to conclude in Lagos. The United States sent an observer mission to that conference. European Union sent observer mission to the conference. There was no ethnic nationality that was left out. We went to them and they came to the conference, including the Fulani. The Yoruba came as Yoruba, the Ijo came as Ijo, the Igbo came as Igbo. The Buhari, that is the last president of Nigeria, Muhammad Buhari, was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that meeting. The current Sultan of Sokoto, Syed Abubakar, he was in the army at the time. He was part of this Fulani delegation that came to that meeting. And all the groups that were armed, all the groups who had become so fed up with what Nigeria was doing to carry arms, aside of course, Niger Delta Volunteer Force, Ghanaian OPC, and then Rafu Wazirike and the Masob he had set up at the time. We were able to persuade them, something the government could not do. We were able to persuade them to please put their arms aside and come to this all-inclusive meeting of the constituent components of Nigeria, so that if we agree, since it is our exclusive preserve to make a constitution, to make a union agreement, which we call constitution for ourselves, then let us see who will come as government to say that that cannot be the basis of union. And so, of course, Obasanjo, in his usual style, tried to threaten. He actually went on national broadcast to tell you the level of engagement, because we wrote letters to his government to say, we, the owners of these sovereignties that are confiscated and conscripted into Nigeria, are having this meeting. We have no quarrel with you, government. We will want you, so that we don't get into a head-on collision, we will want you to come, like South Africa did in 1990, to ease itself out of the apartheid bind. Obasanjo rejected that and went on national TV to say that if we insisted on carrying on with that conference, that it will be a reasonable action. Of course, when he saw the kind of delegates that began to turn up, you were going to arrest Nohoro, you were going to arrest Ojukwu, you were going to arrest Sisiono, you were going to arrest Buhari, who was then leader of opposition, you were going to arrest Soyinka, you were going to arrest Achuzie, you were going to arrest Bolale Boniki, and all such people from across the country, many retired generals. And so Obasanjo was overwhelmed by the gathering of the peoples of Nigeria, and he dressed back. And so we carried on, and we were successful in distilling what would have been a federal constitution from that 2-year meeting. And the draft, I actually have a copy of what came out right here. Just one moment.
No, I mean, I'm sure that...
I'm sure we can see this.
Okay.
I'm sure we're seeing this now. This is, if you can read it, this was what came out of that initiative. Draft Constitution of the peoples of Nigeria. And you can see the ethnic nationalities clearly identified as the people who are coming to federate. I happen to have been secretary of the committee that drafted this constitution, and it was based on the positions, the drafts that were brought by the people. So it wasn't a casual event at all. And at the time we were supposed to now be working to how we process it into the constitution that will govern the union, we went to court as the first act in 2007 to say that the constitution, the one that they imposed on us, cannot be basis of union since it is a fraud, a forgery, something that we did not make, that claimed in its preamble that we, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible and indissoluble country, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. That is the claim in the preamble to the 1999 constitution.
So that's
that claim.
So that's
falls flat.
That's the grouse, because they are saying that the constitution was made.
That's the crux of our ground.
They are saying it was made by.
Yes,
but when
that's our ground. Yes. It wasn't. It wasn't even made by any. It was just this military, just like the British, just like the amalgamation of 1914, in which the British, by an order in council, which is a decree, enacted, and proclaimed on the 1st of January in 1914. That's how we came about this amalgamation of 1999, knocking together 36 states that were indiscriminately, the boundaries were set up by the military. I don't know what Imo State is. I don't know what Abia State is or River State. It's just the military by decree did all of that. And so we said, why don't we do what South Africa did with apartheid, to peacefully go to a meeting and formalize an agreement we can reach for how we can continue to cohabit. The union of 1914 was not our union. And so the same way, the union of 1999 has not been our union, because even for a matter of proof, because that was what we took to court in 2007, decree number 24 of 1999, by which this constitution was brought into being, tells the story of how the constitution was made. Absalom Abaka telling that story. He says he formed a committee called Constitution Debating Committee that went around and talked to people, and those people told them that they wanted a return to 1979 constitutional arrangement. And therefore, the Supreme Military Council of the time, reviewing that report, has now removed what was bad, added what was good, and the balance to be called the 1999 Constitution. There was also an instruction in that decree number 24 of 1999 that decree will not be printed along with the body of the report, the schedule. The schedule is what became the Constitution. Now, by error, they printed that decree number 24 into the Constitution that Nigeria has. That was what they gazetted. That's what all the embassies have today. And so, that decree number 24 is the proof of the falsehood of that preamble. And that preamble is the signature, your signature and my signature, giving life to this constitution that makes us live in our land. And what NINAS has set out to do is to peacefully wind up the operation of that constitution, because that is what is responsible for all of whatever we are complaining about in Nigeria today. Whether it is insecurity, or the corruption we see, or the infrastructure that is zero, or the election we see, or the electricity we do not have, everything you can point to. I will show you the section of this constitution that is responsible for it. And nothing is going to change in Nigeria under this constitution. Nothing that we complain about is going to go away. The insecurity we see is because the arms and ammunition are on the exclusive list. The corruption we see is that the constitution creates avenues for corruption and comprehensively protects the beneficiaries of grand corruption in black and white by the immunity it gives them. That constitution absolves the government of responsibility towards the citizen. And so, if the government does not owe you any obligation, and the spare key to the treasury is in the hands of the heads of the executive branch, because that's how they drafted the appropriation provisions. The governor of your state can take all the money in the treasury without reference to anybody. That is the doing of the constitution. The president of Nigeria can take all the money in the treasury with reference to nobody at all, including the National Assembly. That is what is in black and white. And both of them, the governors, the president, have absolute immunity in section 308. So if they don't owe you obligation, and they have the spare key to the treasury, and they have immunity so that you can't question them what they do. At what point are you going to get anything from them? That is why Nigeria is where it is. On all fronts, anybody who tells you it is leadership that is the problem, ask him how come we are having this kind of leadership. You saw the kind of election we had the last time. So these are the things that, these are the things that NINAS have taken the trouble to dissect one after the other, consulting all of those who are, trapped in that union of death. And we have a consensus against that constitution. We also have a consensus against those who imposed it on us. If you look closely at the map behind me, you will see that we agreed to be a federation and a secular union at independence. We are no longer a federation today because those 5 constitutions that defined our federation were toppled since 1966. And it's been a union at gunpoint for everybody, apart from those who imposed it. And for those who imposed it, you remember there's the Sharia that was imposed in year 2000. Before year 2000, you remember that there was a jihad by which Uthman Danfodio and co came to the northern part, Sokoto and beyond, from what you see in that map. And so it is that imposition of Sharia that came to compound the toppling of our federal foundation. So we have 2 preliminary objections now, that we are no longer a federation and we are no longer a secular state, because a section of the country, 12 contiguous states that you can see, had simultaneously imposed Sharia. Okay. And so we say, if it is no longer a federation, it's no longer a union of sanctity of life, it's no longer a union of equality of, because Sharia, obligates the adherents to kill the rest as infidels. All right. What kind of how am I supposed to submit myself into a union in which my competitors owe it a duty of faith to their God to kill me? Because that is what Sharia is, no matter how we try to paint it. Yes. And then feudalism, in which they say all men are not born equal. Those are the things that resolve now, if we are to remain in a.
Yes, Mr. Nadi, we'll take another break here on the Eastern Eye. When we come back, we will delve into the Aladema epistle. And you tell us exactly what that Aladema epistle is about and how it is part of the NINAS proposition. Stay with us here on the Eastern Eye. Welcome back to the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV. We are reaching you live from Enugu, Southeast Nigeria. The Eastern Eye, of course, is a program that x-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. So, Mr. Nadi, let's talk about the Aladema epistle. It's a lengthy, breathtaking, thought-provoking piece. So, how is it part of the NINAS proposition?
That is actually the foundation upon which everything you see today was built. The beginning of this entire undertaking was where, in the Igbo space, things had gone so very bad. And Ralph Wazurike and his compatriots began to say, it's better for us to go back to being Biafra, which they called Mason. And it was becoming very rowdy. In the other parts of the country, there were also, such movements. The Jaw were fighting, the Yoruba were fighting, the Middle Belt being beheaded. And so we pulled back from that commotion, going from what we learned in Nadeko about what went wrong with Nigeria. We said, okay, let us even get to the root of the matter. We went into research all the way to the British archives to find out what they put into that foundation upon which we have been struggling to build. And it was what we found there that we decided, we came to the realization that it was the constitutional arrangements that they imposed from beginning, which they managed to reinforce in the mid-60s in the war that they levied against us, the Igbo, that became the constitution that now tied us, to the ground, with our hands to the back. And so, how will we reverse the Igbo situation? And when I say we, these things were being done in consultation with the Ojukwu that led the war of the Biafra time. This was being done in consultation with individuals like Igbo patriots, like Ndubisi Kano, Admiral Godwin Ndubisi Kano. This was being done with participation of patriots, CC Ono, and a whole lot of them like that. And we worked quietly on account of the character of Nigeria and their British sponsors. We decided to work quietly in the period of consultations, building alliances with our neighbors, because we realized that if the Igbo attempted to go alone to solve the problem they were seeing, they will be isolated once again by the rest of the country. And so these other people were now in that same problem. The Ijaw were now in even more serious problem. The Anang, the Efik, the Ogoni, all of them in the former Eastern region were in the same problem. The same enemy was now tormenting them. Kensari had been hanged, Isaac Boro had been beaten down, Ijaw oil and gas assets now belong to Jigawa and Kano people, and everybody was fighting. So we said, instead of Igbo going alone, I don't know whether you can put up the map. There's one map, the map of the dot in circle, the yellow map that has a white dot in the eastern part. If you put it up to your viewers, you will then see what Nigeria did to beat down Eastern region in 1967. When they cut Nigeria into 12 states, that portion in white was the East Central state that remained after the Southeastern state and River state were removed or carved out into the states of their own. That Southeastern state is the Cross River and Akwa Ibom of today. That River state of 1967 is the Rivers and Bayelsa of today. And when you remove those four from what was Eastern region of the time, you then have this small circle that is 5 states of Imo, Abia, Anambra, Enugu, and Ebonyi today. And so it was in the attempt to be sure that we are not isolated and beaten down by the alliance of the rest of Nigeria once more, that we decided it was better to go as an alliance. Let us consult with those who are now crying with us, just like us. So we went from even Benin, because the Midwest, you remember there was Asaba that was not part of Eastern region, but Akuzia was from the part, Nzogu was on the part. The massacre in Asaba was because they were Igbo. On the day of adversity, they become Igbo. On the day of sharing benefits, they become something else, according to the nomenclature of Nigeria. And so we put aside every name Nigeria called everybody, and we went to talk to the owners of the sovereignty. There's the other map too, the map of 1885 that you have, so that you could see who and who were in that Eastern region, who and who were in that Midwestern region. You will see that the Igbo, straddles the River Niger onto the side that was Midwest. We went to Ijaw as Ijaw, Ogoni as Ogoni, Anang as Anang, Efik as Efik. We went beyond the eastern side to the Yoruba side. From Owo to Akure to Ibadan, back to Lagos, everywhere Yoruba thought leaders to say, gentlemen, this is what we are trapped in now. As they kill us, they kill you. As they seize our economic assets, they seize our economic assets. And this is the constitution by which they are doing it. Can't we all do something together to topple that bad arrangement like the people who toppled apartheid in South Africa did? We went to the Middle Belt and did the same. The Chief, the Berom, the Juku, the Doma, and all of those who are being slaughtered today, house to house. It took us 7 years, no less than 6 years. It was when we had done all of that, and when we had gone to Pronaco, and when we had gone to court in 2007 to challenge the legitimacy of this forgery, that we came down to having to find a point at which we began to talk to our people in the manner that the enemy can no longer stop. And so by 2012, then Jonathan had emerged as president, and Jonathan had graciously engaged this proposition of what we could do with Nigeria, and it became the conference. Eventually became the conference of 2014. But in between, it had become, because Jonathan was approaching the matter totally differently from how Obasanjo did, and so we felt that the time had come to inform our own people having engaged them quietly across Aba, Onitsha, Nnewi, everywhere, house to house. So that Aladima epistle was a formal communication to the Igbo worldwide, intimating them of this framework of a reversal of our situation, so that they could openly come along like others were coming along, and so that's how it came. 2012, we actually not only publicized it, we published it in national dailies. If people were if anybody will research now, we published it in Sun newspaper particularly, so that people will read it. And so what is in that Aladima is the whole story of how the British came here, and how we became Nigeria, and how it collapsed in the mid-60s, and how Nigeria now imposed this bad arrangement, and what we could do about everything you see in that Aladima is what the other components of constituent components of Nigeria eventually began to adopt. The Yoruba adopted it, the Niger Delta adopted it, the Middle Belt adopted it as something we could do together, since it's only one group of people that are tormenting all of us, yes, killing people everywhere.
Yes, Mr. Nade, we have about 2 minutes to go, and I can tell for sure this is not the last time we will be talking about this. We'll have many more outings of this, but I'll ask you to tell us in about 2 minutes how you intend to put this across. With everything Nigeria is going through currently, how will you put this across? Who are your contact points in government? Because obviously all this you are talking about will not see the light of day if you don't get a buy-in of the government.
We have, I can assure you, and you can research it, the constitutional force majeure that was declared by the collectivity of these nationalities, Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, on the 16th of December in 2020, was a formal proposition placed on the table for the government of the Federation of Nigeria and all its constituent components, and to the international community, the stakeholder community in the international circuit, to say Nigeria will go up in smoke. It doesn't matter how anybody interprets it. The owners of Nigeria are being tormented, being killed in the numbers we see. They've been rendered, they have been impoverished because their economic assets have been hijacked by a monster. And that proposition, we published it in Guardian newspaper, 4 pages, on the 20th of January in 2021. It is still sitting there. The 20th of January edition of Guardian newspaper has it. We served it on all the diplomatic missions in Nigeria and the UN Security Council and the UN Trusteeship Council. Therefore, what we are saying in it, because it is a misconception. I'm a lawyer, not just a lawyer. I'm a lawyer with specialty in that area of law that has to do with constitution making. The business of constitution making is not for the government. It's not for the National Assembly. It is beyond their mandate. It's like saying that the management of a company will now write the memo and articles of that company. The owners of the enterprise called Nigeria are the constituent components that own the sovereignties that are consolidated. And so we have placed this proposition before the government and the peoples of Nigeria formally. And I can tell you that they have a limited time. Since that 2020, we advised against going to election of 2023 under the 1999 Constitution. They have gone to that election. You can see the outcome. The power to make constitution is exclusive to the peoples of Nigeria, not even the government, not even the Supreme Court.
You know what, Mr.
And so they have a choice. They have a choice to come forward so that we can go to transition. That's what we're waiting for now. If they don't come, the owners of the sovereignty will act unilaterally.
We are totally out of time for this episode. Of course, there will be regular
Right.
outings. You have regular outings here so we can thrash out some of the issues arising from this discussion. And I have to thank you so much.
Thank
Tony
you.
Nadi is the legal practitioner and Secretary General of the Lower Niger Congress, LNC, and the co-convener of NINAS, that is the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the Eastern Eye tonight.
Thank you for having me.